Welcome to the Bowls England official podcast, The Extra End. I'm Sian, Honnor, editor of Bowls International magazine, and tonight I'm very lucky to be joined by World Bowls International Technical Official Allan Thornhill, who's a very well-known face on the bowls circuit around the world. Allan, thank you so much for taking part and talking to me. How are you?
Pleasure, Sian. Yeah, good. Thanks, Sian. Yeah, it's a pleasure to join you. Excellent features, these podcasts, so well done for doing these.
Thank you very much. Right, should we start at the beginning? For those that might not know, Allan, can you sort of describe what an umpire does in bowls?
Yeah, sure. Really, the role of an umpire is to oversee the laws of the sport and to oversee the game, and that it complies with the laws of the sport. That's, I think, on its broadest description, that's what we do. But beyond that, I think we offer an advisory capacity for players. Clearly, what everybody sees us doing is deciding disputed shots by measuring, and certainly with marking, we're on the rink a bit more, so you see us on the rink officiating. But also, we work on behalf of the governing body to make sure that the games that are being played that work to their requirements, and obviously work to the laws of the sport. Markers, as most people have seen, markers are on the end of the rink marking singles games. They have a few more duties like marking touches, keeping the scorecard, advising spectators the state of the play. If you've seen people using lollipops, or certainly on a televised event, we now announce what the shots are. And I guess markers are really acting as the eyes of a player.
So you're right at the top. You're an international technical official. What made you get involved in the first place?
Yeah, go way back, 75 odd years ago. My granddad, all my grandparents actually played bowls, and I used to take the mickey out of him going up to the outdoor green dressed in his white trousers and his blazer and looking very smart. And I got involved playing, as most people, I think the top level of this game have come through their families. And as I became a sort of better player, I was getting exposed to officials, markers when I'm playing singles, and I thought, I could probably do that. Doesn't look too difficult. Stupid mistake to make, but yeah. I kind of started taking up marking and volunteering for marking in my local club, local singles games, and I then sort of had the inkling that I should become an umpire. And there was a mentor, well, I call him a mentor. He was a good friend of the family's. He was an umpire at the time, and he sort of encouraged me and mentored me all the way through. And I was 21 when I first took the exam. And at that time, we're going back to the late 80s now. At that time, I was probably the youngest in the country. By probably a long margin as well. So that's really where it all started, from the grandparent route, really.
And you say you were young at the time. I mean, I know there obviously are young markers and umpires now, same as there are a number of younger bowlers that people know that don't bowl might not necessarily realise. But I think still the image of an umpire is an older person. Would you agree?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we are fortunate to have some officials under the age of 40. I guess I'm calling people under 40 young because I'm older than that now. But we are lucky enough to have some youngsters officiating, but they're very few and far between. And that's across the world. And I think one of the things I put that down to, of course, is a younger player is going to want to progress into the game and play at their highest level. And the thought of taking on umpiring and standing at the end of the rink is probably not that appealing, to be fair. So I think that's probably the biggest barrier to us getting younger people involved, especially players, because they just want to play bowls.
Was there a part of you that wanted to change the perception of an umpire or a technical official when you got involved?
Um, Probably not right at the start. I think I was more concentrating on um, earning respect, and for a 21-year-old to go on and officiate in a game of slightly older people, and them having the perception that I don't know anything. I was working quite hard to get my own confidence and my own level of respect at the very start. Going going beyond that, and I think once I got into national, and certainly into international level stuff, that's when the promotion comes in. That's where the sort of trying to encourage younger people to join the sport, and actually for all ages to join and become umpires, because there is a shortage of umpires around the world, and I think it's important that we attract those people as well, because we're not all going to last forever, and we need people coming through to officiate in this game.
So, how does it work, Alan? What was your path into it? You've made the decision that you want to get involved in the game in that way. What happened then?
I think if you ask any of my colleagues, luck. But I think there was a bit of luck involved. There was a lot of being in the right place at the right time. But I worked hard at local level to pretty much sign up for anything I could get my hands on. Go and officiate at county competitions, go and officiate at the club finals, and just get those under my belt and get the experience and earn the respect. And then I took the next step from what was in those days club umpire, took the next step into sort of regional, which is sort of county level, but then international. And getting a national qualification was really the start of it, and that allowed me then to get to the national championships, both indoor and outdoor, which were some of my best experiences at national level. Doing the national championships at Worthing for the first time, when there were crowds and crowds of people down there, was just incredible. And I think that there was a long period of being a national umpire. I took a little break for about 5-6 years, and then came back to it. But there was a long period of being a national umpire, and I thought, no, now's the time to really progress. And I think that's where being in the right time, being in the right place at the right time, it was what paid off for me. Working hard and being spotted. And that really led into the first World Indoor Championships in 2001, and then ultimately onto the first Commonwealth Games in Manchester.
Did you used to get nervous before those big tournaments? Do you still get nervous?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I remember my first Middleton Cup final at Worthing. It was horrendous. It was a very clammy hand experience. But once you get through those first few, it does become easier. But I think a lot of it has to do with having confidence in your ability. I do get nervous still. I probably controlled nerves, adrenaline. Certainly going into something like a world indoor final or anything at the Commonwealth Games is always a nervy moment. Have you got everything? One of my biggest fears is not having everything with me, and the right equipment. And is something going to fail? Am I going to mess up on the rink? Those are the things that go through your mind before you step out there. And I think that initial nerves is then taken over by adrenaline when you get out there and start the game.
So you've officiated at 5 Commonwealth Games starting in 2002, as you said. What stands out for you? What are your greatest highlights from those 5 events? Massive events for you to be involved in.
Yeah, I've been extremely fortunate. I think It's difficult to go back through the records too far, but I think I'm the only official that's done 5 consecutive Commonwealth Games, which is huge for me. I mean, it's a massive achievement. Every games has been different, and everyone has got its memories clearly, and same for players really. First one was Manchester 2002, as you said. That one for me stands out because I got selected to do the men's gold medal match, which was between Bobby Donnelly and Jeremy Henry. It was the most appalling day. I mean, it was absolutely pouring down with rain, but it was just focus all the way, and got through, marking that singles final. That was probably the biggest achievement at that point. But going on to other games, I mean, they've all been different for different reasons, and memorable for different reasons. I think the one that really sticks out for me is Delhi in 2010. The heat, primarily on that one, but also the bugs, and actually with that one, the friendships as well that we made, not just from the UK umpires that went out there, but across the world. That was really the first time when we all gelled so well together, because we were all overseas officials. There was no Indian officials apart from the national guys that were working with us, but we made such good friends out there. But the bugs on that one were quite entertaining.
Such an experience as well for you to be able to travel around the world doing something that you love.
Yeah, been kind of lucky. Yeah, I mean, Australia a couple of times. New Zealand was fantastic. In 2018, for World Championships. Delhi, yeah, it's been great. But equally, the Glasgow Games in 2014 were really good. I mean, they were fantastic games, really well put on, very good sport. And that was just as memorable as flying out to Delhi. But yeah, I have been lucky. I've managed to get some good trips, and even the sort of the lower international level, if you like, that's the wrong way to put it, but the lower international level, I've been to Cyprus so many times, Portugal, Spain. It's been really good. I've been very fortunate. Who would have thought?
And of course, you also umpire at the World Indoor Championships and have done for many years. How different is that one? Because obviously it's a televised comp, indoor conditions. How does that compare to some of the other comps?
It's totally different. The World Indoor, World Bowls Tour events are just totally different to anything else any official will experience anywhere. It's a different atmosphere. It's clearly a single rink, which is almost like an enclosed arena. So the levels of adrenaline, the levels of nervousness ramp up a little bit, but also by the same token do the levels of concentration. And the first televised event always throws in a few curveballs. You don't really know what to expect. You are conscious of the cameras initially, but after a couple of times doing it, you kind of forget they're there. And I think the key for me has been getting into a routine whenever I step on that rink. I do the same thing every time I step on the rink. Same routine, and actually I carry that over to domestic stuff now as well. But it's a different level of concentration and sharpness that you have to have.
How do you manage to juggle it all? Because you've got you're married, you've got a son, you obviously you work. What do you do for a living? Remind people.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure my wife thinks I'm still married, but I head up laboratories at the Institute of Cancer Research, so a cancer researcher basically. That pays the mortgage. It's it's tricky juggling everything. It's especially the bigger tournaments. When you're away for weeks on end, and that's hard on the family as well as work. And I have to take annual leave for those tournaments. I've been very fortunate. I mean, a fantastic employer. I can't fault the support they give me. They've given me extra days annual leave for the big events like Commonwealth. So, I am very fortunate in that respect. And, one of the good things about things like the World Indoor Championships is they're a fixed date every year. So everybody at work knows now for the last 20 years I've been going off for 1 or 2 weeks in January. So again, it becomes a bit of a routine for them. But yeah, you have to juggle it. You can't do everything. And I think I have been in a situation a few times where there's so much to do during the year that you physically you can't do it. You just have to turn things down, and that's I hate doing it, but sometimes you have to do it, and you have to juggle that with the family holidays as well. It's tough, same as it is for the players.
Yeah. Do you still bowl yourself at all?
I get the occasional roll up on the portable rink, but that's about it nowadays. I rarely put a bowl up. I might get dragged in if people are desperate locally, but no, I haven't played probably seriously for around about 16 odd years, because I just don't have the time. And it's not just the on rink officiating and actually working in the game. It's the admin stuff that I've been involved in, the training development. All of that takes time outside of actually turning up at a match and officiating. So you can't do it all, as I said. So you kind of just have to pick and choose what you can do.
Mm. Do you have to practice? I mean, how often do you have to do, a refresher course? How does it work?
Yeah, it's a bit of a weird one actually, because people think of an umpire just get down and measure, but I do practice. I actually practice quite a lot. Where I was sort of running training development courses, I would always get the opportunity at those weekends to just demonstrate measures or to just get down and have a little bit of practice myself. But before anything major, like the World Championships in January or Commonwealth or World Bowls, I will always try and get down the local rink, either indoor or outdoor, get some measures set up, get some distances, get some close tight shots set up, and just have a bit of a practice. It just keeps the eye in, and actually keeps the hand in as well. Yeah, I really do have to practice. I think if you ask any of my colleagues, they'll know that my distances are always a bit wobbly. So that's the thing I really practice hard at, is getting that as accurate as I can for the players.
You must get asked questions all the time when you're on sort of the various circuits from bowlers. What are the most common ones that they want advice on?
Yeah, it does vary a lot. I think when we're in the world indoor scenario, we're involved in Q&A sessions at Potter's Leisure Resort, and we're involved in answering questions on social media when they're live streaming and things like that. So I think the most common question, if we're doing anything online, is generally when people are watching live streams, they'll ask what a toucher is, or those sort of common things that occur that just look a bit odd for somebody who's never seen the game before. So those are the sort of things we're dealing with most of the time. Certainly in Q&As at those events, it can vary so much, but people are generally interested in getting an answer to a scenario they've faced in the past, and they just want to know the answer, because nobody's given them the right answer. So they're always good platforms for allowing us to do that. The other thing that I'm involved in is answering emails and I've got a website that people can email into. I'm on social media, but also we're just sort of trying to plan a Facebook Live Q&A in this time of video conferencing. So I'm going to try and run a Q&A session on Facebook Live, which will be quite interesting. So we'll see how that goes.
Do you think that bowlers generally are sort of au fait with the rules of the game?
No, and I think that extends right from grassroots up to international. I am quite surprised that some of the top players don't know a lot of the basics. What other sport would you go into? International rugby players, international footballers that wouldn't know the rules that they're playing to. I don't particularly get concerned about it too much because I think it is the norm. What I do get frustrated at is people not having access to a law book or not spending £2.50 or £3 or whatever they are on a law book and keeping it in their bag. And that's often where you get into problems at clubs, or you get emails coming in asking about a scenario and it turns into a big bun fight and everybody's getting very frustrated with it, when actually it could have been solved very easily by just somebody picking their law book out the bag. But it doesn't surprise me, to be honest.
You talked about respect earlier. Do you think that officials, is that a problem between bowlers and officials? Do you always get the respect that as an umpire or a marker or a technical official you deserve? Maybe not you personally, I mean, you're very well known, but do you think generally that's an issue?
Yes, I think so. I think it's improved over the years, but I think it really depends on how the official is as a person, and that probably sounds really weird, but the way I respect was to try and work with the players to earn that and share the knowledge and work really hard to understand the laws and understand and be as accurate as I could and be alert. And I think that is missing in some people. You have to work with the players closely. You're not the person that just stands in the corner and does nothing. You should be active. You should be out there working with the players and chatting with them when you can, but also offering advice and things quite simple, like a ball goes in the ditch. Is it a toucher? Well, go and have a chat with them. Confidence. A lot of people lack confidence when they're out there officiating, and that can come across as being a bit of a barrier. But I think the worst thing, the thing that really affects officials as a whole, is tar in the brush, if you like, is those that are over officious and pedantic. I've always preached in training development courses not to read the law book as black and white, but to understand how the game is played and what the intent of the law is. And I think where you end up with problems is where umpires are too officious and too pedantic about the laws, and that's where they lose respect. I mean,
Sorry, I was just going to say, I think if a player has had a bad experience with one umpire, unfortunately, they then tar everyone else with the same brush. And, we've all heard people stand on the green and it's clearly a measure. It's clearly tight. You can't just don't call the umpire on. That must be very frustrating from your point of view.
At times it is, yes. You can stand behind the rink with a pair of calipers and they're trying to fit a box measure in a gap that's barely 3 inches. And that is very frustrating. And yes, they may have had a situation where an umpire's come on, has been a little bit shaky, and has started chasing the jack around the ring. But not everybody is the same. We all make mistakes, but if you can earn the confidence of the players just with that very first measure. Same with marking. The classic person to mark for was dear old Tony Alcock. He would drill a marker with questions for the first 4 or 5 ends until he got the confidence in the marker. He was a very difficult person to mark for, but it was very rewarding if you got it right. So you've got to earn the confidence of the players, but we all recognise that people haven't always got the talent, haven't always got the ability to get it right. But hopefully, if they've got mentors and people that can help them with that, that's where they can learn.
Do you take inspiration from other sports in terms of umpires or referees?
Yeah, I'm not a great sports fan, but I do like to watch the odd bit of rugby. I hate football with a passion. But just as I became an international umpire, I looked at a couple of autobiographies. One was Pierluigi Gallina, I think his name was, who was a top football referee at the time. He was Italian. He stood out on the pitch because he was bald and had big bulging eyes. And I thought I'd read his autobiography, and it was fascinating. It resonated with what I felt an official should be. And then latterly, I've read Nigel Owen's autobiography and similar thoughts as I've read through that. I think at a very high level, we're all aiming for the same thing. We're all aiming to be as professional as we can for the benefit of the players and the sport. And that really comes across, particularly in those 2 examples of how they worked hard and their attitude towards officiating. And I've kind of tried to take the same approach as best I can.
What's the most difficult situation you've ever encountered? I mean, you must have lots of stories, things must have gone wrong in the past. Like, what stands out in your mind over the years?
Yeah, umpire's never going to admit to turning the wrong bowl out, but I think we can always think back and think, well, we could have done that better, or I wish I'd made that decision, or I wish I'd stepped in. Sometimes I think I've been lucky and got away with things, but what I find really challenging sometimes is how different officiating at club, county, national level is to officiating at Commonwealth Games and World Championships. But what you would think would be the most simple decision or the simple activity is magnified tenfold. And you can get, certainly people who have never experienced that before, doing it for the first time, can get caught out by what looks like a simple scenario getting it completely wrong because the event takes over. And I've been in a couple of situations like that where I've sort of walked on and thought, I could have done that better. But I think the one that really still upsets me quite a bit is calling a game before it had actually ended. I got the scorecard wrong, and that was in a WBT event. Thankfully it wasn't live on TV, but it was being streamed. But I basically called the end of the game as an official, not as the marker. To be honest, if I was a marker, I could have got away with it because I would have been just told to carry on. But as the official offering, I called it. And that affected me for months. It really did mess me up for a long time. I felt so bad for both players. And it took me a long time to get over that. I was pretty much ready to quit on that one. But I think that's probably the worst.
So, I mean, what happened in that situation? You just had to hold your hands up and say, "Look, I'm really sorry, I got it wrong."
In the end, I mean, the game was over. I mean, we'd all left the rink. The players were confused, but they took my my decision as right. They thought, well, he must be right. He's got the scorecard in his hand. But I'd been distracted and missed an end, which you sort of sit there and think, how on earth could I have missed an end in a WBT tournament with one ring? But I'd missed an end off the scorecard, and I called it too early. It was a case of getting over it. Meeting with the tournament director, Richard Madison, at the time, and crying my eyes out.
Oh, no.
I was distraught. I was really distraught for the two players. It was like the worst thing I could have done. But ultimately, yes, it's getting everybody together and being very apologetic and trying to find a resolution to it, which the WBT did in the end. I've seen both players subsequently, and they're absolutely fine.
No one tried to punch you or anything?
No, didn't get that close.
Who's the best player you've ever seen or ever sort of marked or umpired for?
Oh, Sean, that's such a hard question. But apart from you, of course, I absolutely love working with Australian players. I think they have a really interesting ethic. They seem to play different to everybody else, and I'm sure you've experienced that as well. I loved working with people like Kelvin Kirk-O'Karen, and players like that, and they were quite inspiring. But I think until you walk onto the rink with people like Alex Marshall and Paul Foster, they really do inspire everybody. And I think a lot of people, and we've seen it certainly at World Outdoor Championships and Commonwealth Games, where you've got an official that has never met those players before. They're friends with people like Kelvin, they're friends with Karen, they're friends with Steve Glasson, and they know all these people. But until they walk on the rink with Alex and Paul, and other people of similar ilk, they kind of melt and can't handle it. They get a bit starstruck, as I did when I first stepped on the rink with both of them.
Yeah.
But once you get to know them, it's fine. And there's loads of players. I don't think there's anybody I don't get on with. But I think those 2-3 players are particularly inspiring. The one, actually, just moving on from that, the one person I really regret not being able to work with or mark for was David Bryan. That would have been, I guess, the ultimate dream, because I think in most players' eyes, he's still the greatest.
Yeah. All of the people that you've mentioned are characters, and that must be a really nice element of your job, getting to meet different people, but also to sort of see the different personalities and socialise off the green as well as seeing them in action on the green. Absolutely,
yeah. And I think what is so humbling is that at that level, you're just drawn in with the players. I can remember in Glasgow, the England girls all sitting around chatting with us on the grass in a down session. Natalie with her medals, and we're sort of passing the medals around and things. So that's such a nice feeling to be part of that. Probably not appropriate in some respects, but it's quite nice to feel part of that. And yeah, when you go overseas and they come and say hello and welcome you to their country and ask how you are and everything, it's just a nice feeling. But they become friends.
Yeah.
You make friends with them when you're working with them.
So if anybody listening to this is thinking about getting involved in being an official, what advice would you give to them?
Yeah, I think the big thing is to have that desire to commit to it. It's not something that you really dabble in. because you can lose your knowledge. I mean, you can forget things, but you know, can also lose the skills. And I think having a desire to commit, especially as you get further on into an umpiring career, is quite important. It's very difficult, as I think, as we said earlier, with the younger element. You know, it's very difficult to compete and officiate at a high level at the same time. Some people have done it, and some people have done it very successfully, but it's very difficult to do and achieve both. I think physically, be reasonably fit, you know, able to stand for up to 4 hours in all sorts of weathers. Be able to get up and down on and off the rink is quite key as well. But I think those are the real common traits. Going into becoming an umpire for the first time, having a good understanding of how the game is played is really key. If you don't understand the game and haven't played it yourself, it's very difficult to apply the intent of a law to something, and that's where you tend to get the pedantic umpires coming in, because they read a law book and they think, well, that's how you play the game, and it's actually not. So getting a few years playing experience under their belt is quite important.
So, do most people go on to become umpires, or are there a large number that would be a marker?
Yeah, a bit of both, actually. I mean, you know, every country is a little bit different in the way they train and develop their officials. I think markers and umpires are part and parcel, but you do get really good markers that stay markers and prefer to do that because they're part of the game. And clearly you get some very good umpires as well. But certainly within England, the scheme now has developed from just like a 3-level umpiring qualification to I think it's 2 or 3 levels of marker. Some really good intense training for markers, based on working experience and mentorship, and then progression onto umpiring following that. You know, marking is a skill. I think we all talk about officials as being umpires, but actually a marker, if you get a skilled marker, that can really make a game, and equally a bad marker could break a game as well.
Well, yeah, even at a club level, you know, we've all been in that position where you've got a singles match to arrange and you need to find a marker, and you're thinking, well, I know who it's the same people that always get asked because they're good, and you know they're good.
Yeah, and wouldn't it be nice to have you know, county finals being marked by properly trained officials and not your club president or your county president? I mean, I know that's going back a little bit now, but you know, that was the case.
I don't think so. I think that still happens in a number of counties.
I'm sure it does. Yeah, I think if there's a really good grounding of officials within a county or within a region, then they're more likely to use them. And you know, we're lucky. We're very lucky in Surrey that, you know, we've used trained officials for years and years. Well, certainly since I've been a national umpire, which is years and years. So, you know, every county is different, and every organisation is different. Every governing body is, but I think it's getting there. You know, the training, the skill set is there. It just needs to be utilised properly. And one of my big concerns at the moment is what direction are we going as officials? Certainly within England, again, I said, you know, every country is different, but certainly within England, you know, what direction are we going? What foresight have we got to drive not just the game forward, but what we do as part of the game? And I think, you know, both governing bodies need to really look at this quite carefully.
What are your concerns, Alan?
We're losing members. The skill set's not being utilised. You know, organisation is a little bit chaotic at times. I think there is a financial aspect to the whole thing. You know, would a governing body use some of the top officials if we're asking for expenses in preference to a local official that probably isn't the same sort of standard? You know, that is happening. You know, and that has happened at a high level in the past. But I think we really need, as an umpiring body, we really need to have that drive forward to look to the future, and you know, how are we as an organisation going to take it forward? That's really what I'm concerned about. You know, it's going to come a point, if we don't change, that officials aren't going to be used at all at local level.
Is there much collaboration between indoors and outdoors in terms of umpiring?
Yeah, because we're all one. You know, we're not now a segregated body in terms of male or female, but we're also you know, working for both. We're 12 months of the year. So, you know, the same trained umpire will work equally for the indoor governing bodies as well as the outdoor. And I think that is pretty consistent worldwide.
But that's a step forward in terms of where the game was even 10 years ago, isn't it?
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely.
What do you what would be the first port of call for people who might be interested in getting involved? Like, what would someone do if they were seriously thinking about taking a course?
Contact your local umpiring organisation. You know, if every country operates slightly differently in terms of its structure, but you know, if the first port of call would certainly be the national governing body, either their website or contact them directly. If there is an umpiring body that's either part of that national body, then they'll put you in touch. Look on the web. You know, you can certainly search up umpiring bodies around each country, and generally the approach is to apply. You know, fill in an application for training. I think most bodies now have that process where an application is filled in, and they'll go through some either home study, home learning, answering question papers, and then there's generally a more formal training workshop or series of workshops where they'll be told some of the intricacies of the laws, and also get out there and practice.
Sorry.
Oh, sorry.
How much does it cost?
Yeah, it's not cheap. It, I think it does vary per country, but certainly within England, it's up around about the £45 mark to get the whole training side of things done. The most expensive part of anything is getting the kit and the uniform. The umpiring kits, if you buy them commercially, they're upwards of 150 plus pounds. So they're not. It's not a cheap experience. A lot of people will have some of the most common equipment around anyway, or they'll be passed down, or they can acquire them from car boot sales and things like that. But you know, if you want decent kit, you're gonna have to pay some decent money for it. And then clearly, you know, things like uniforms. If you're a bowler, you're going to have waterproofs and those sort of things. But you know, buying shirts and trousers and things like that is not cheap either now.
And the what's the remuneration for what you get? Expenses, don't you?
In some places we do. It varies per event. You can get mileage allowances for some events. Generally, at things like county level and above, you'll get mileage allowance and probably a daily expense. But that's relatively new. Yes, that's quite recent to actually get, say, a tenner for a game. You know, in the good old days when I first started, you got nothing. and that's been the case for quite a few years now. You do it for love.
Yeah, I think that's an important point to make. You know, you guys aren't out there earning a wage in any way, shape, or form doing it. You're obviously really passionate about the game and about the job that you're doing.
Yes, absolutely. You know, we can't pay a mortgage on what we get for umpiring, that's for sure. So yeah, it's there's not a lot of money in it, and you know, even at the highest level, you know, there's not the money that would sustain your expenses realistically. Clearly, I've been very fortunate to attend Commonwealth games where everything is paid for. That's fantastic. You know, that's about the only thing or the only event that really you're attending and getting everything paid for plus expenses.
What are your future aims? What's your path going forward in terms of umpiring?
Um, well, you know, I'm still heavily involved in admin. I've moved sort of away from um, the national development and national administration side of things now to world level, World Bowls Laws Committee. I've been on that for a few years now and loving it. Very interesting. Dealing with things coming in from all around the world, not just questions, but also dealing with training development of umpires globally as well, which is really interesting. I think in terms of actual officiating, I've now been very fortunate to be the chief ITO at the Atlantic Championships down in Wales. And that's sort of gearing me up now to be the chief ITO at Birmingham 22. So that's the next big thing, really, looking at that. And I kind of don't think too much beyond that, to be honest. You know, how long have I got umpiring? Well, you know, I could probably go on for another 20, 30 years if I'm really lucky. But you know, realistically, would I want to? Certainly at a high level, not. But I feel I've got another couple of Commonwealth games in me at least. And World Bowls Tour stuff, I'll keep going as long as they want me. I'm chief official on that, so we've got a really good team working on that now. So you know, keep working with them. But I tend not to think too far ahead.
It would be pretty special to be the chief ITO for home games at Leamington, though, wouldn't it?
Yes, yeah, it's going to be super hard work, but I'm equally proud and honoured to be in that position. You know, it's going to be a great games, I think. You know, things are looking very good for those games. I think the sport is going to be fantastic.
That's great, Alan. Thank you. You've been a pleasure to talk to. Thank you very much for joining me.
Thank you, Sharon. It's been a pleasure.